Hey, what's up YouTube? And in this video we're going to cover an intro to CSS. So we're going to learn what CSS does and how it works. So what is CSS, or cascading style sheets? CSS allows you to create rules that specify how content of an element should appear. You can tell your paragraphs to be blue, your background to be yellow, and all text on the page should be Helvetica or Times New Roman. CSS is a powerful feature that lets you manipulate how elements should look on a page. So let's see how CSS works in action. So here is New York Times with CSS, and here's New York Times without CSS. Basically there is no styling and it's boring. So CSS styles rules with HTML element. So here we can see a P, some curly braces, and this font family Helvetica. So CSS works by associating rules with its HTML element, like a P tag. A CSS rule contains a selector and a declaration. The font family here will be the selector. Sorry, the P will be the selector, and the declaration will be everything inside the curly braces. This rule tells the browser to style all the P elements with a Helvetica font. Here's an example of CSS. We can also group styles by comma separating them. So in this CSS rule, we're telling the H1s, the H2, and the H3 to have a font family of Comic Sans MS. We're specifying that the color of these headings should be light blue. Another example is the P elements in our website should have a font size of 20 pixels. So how do we start using CSS? First, we have to declare a external style sheet in our HTML in the head of our HTML. Here we have a link tag. We have an href, and its value it's css/style.css. This is the file that we're going to create to start writing our CSS declarations. We specify the type of document and the rel. So href specifies the path to the CSS file, type specifies the type of document that's being linked to, and rel specifies the relationship between the HTML page and the file it is being linked to. So now, going back to our project, there's only one difference. I changed this photo here, and the HTML, it's all the same. First thing we have to do is link to our style.css. So first, before we link, let's create a new folder, and we're gonna name this folder CSS. Inside our CSS folder, we want to create a new file, and we want to name this style.css. Now, to link to this style, we have to use this link tag that I put here. So you do that by writing link href, and we have to specify the path that this style is at. And okay, it looked like it was a folder, but it's a CSS file. So we're gonna link to this folder CSS and style.css. So we do that by saying css/style.css. Next, we tell it the type, and it's text/css. Next, we tell the relationship style sheet. Now our link tag is done, and we can start writing CSS declarations. So now in our style.css, first let's test if our CSS is actually working. This is something you want to do with every project. Let me just increase the font here just to check if the CSS is working. So let's just set something for now. Body color red. I'll explain this now, but let's see if it's actually working. So if our color of our text turns red, then we know that we have linked our CSS correctly. Great. Once we have that, let's just start messing around and let's style this boring looking web page. I mean, who will want to see this anyways? So the first thing, let's select our body tag. And right now, let's just play around with CSS. I want you guys to get a hold and feel of how it works. Later on in the videos, I'm going to teach you more about these properties and each of them. But for now, let's just play around and let's just get a hold of how it works. So first, let's change the font family of our web page. It looks pretty boring. So I'll say font family, and I'm gonna give it Comic Sans MS. Now if we save our style.css and go to our web page, notice how now our font has this very horrible font that you wouldn't really want to use, but this is just for demo purposes. Next thing, let's give our body's border 10 pixels. Let's say it's solid, and let's give it a color like Dodger blue. If you don't want to use Dodger blue, you can look up CSS color keywords. Should take you to this MDN link right here. And here we'll have a list of different color keywords that you can use. You can use blanched almond or cornflower blue. For now, I'm sticking to Dodger blue. So let's save that. And if you go to our page, notice how now our body, which is the outermost element that wraps everything inside, has a border that's Dodger blue colored, and it's 10 pixels wide. You can play around with this value. You can say 100 pixels. And look at what that does. But for now, I'm going to keep it to 10. And let's add some spacing between this light blue and inside our content, because things are kind of close together here. We can add something called padding. Let's say 50 pixels. I want 50 pixels of space between that border and all our stuff inside our body element. Next, I want to style my H1 that has my name in it. I'm going to give it a property called text align, and this centers my H1 in the middle of the page. I want to make the font size bigger, so I'll give it a 50 pixel font size. And notice how that changed how big our H1 is looking. Next, I want to do something similar to our H2. Select our H2, and I'll say text align center, and I'll give this one a smaller font size of 30 pixels, and then I'll change the color to like gray. Let's save that, and let's see how it's looking. Now we have front-end web developer and this light gray color. Again, you can use whatever color you want. This is your web page. Next, I'm tired of looking at these boring old links, so I'm gonna select the A tags in our web page, and I'm gonna remove this underline that the A tags have. So to do that, I will tell it text decoration to none, and then I'm gonna change the color of the links to that Dodger blue that we selected. Dodger blue. Once I refresh the page, notice how I get rid of that ugly underline and I change the color of the text. Next, I want to style my image that holds a picture of me, and I want to just give it a border, let's say 5 pixels, and instead of saying solid, we can use something like dashed or dotted. If you want to see different variations, you can just simply go to Google and look up CSS border styles, and we'll get a list from these nice resources. We'll get a list like dotted, dash, solid, double, groove, rich, inset, outset. You can play around with any of these values. So let's see that groove, and then set a color to it as Dodger blue. Go back to my web page. Notice how I have this like 90s looking border, on my picture here, but I'm gonna change that to dashed. Now I have this dashed looking border. Next thing I want to do, I want to style the H3s inside my web page. So first thing I'm gonna do is just change their color to Dodger blue. Maybe give them a font size, let's say 25 pixels. I save my style sheet, and then these are H3s here. Notice how they turn into that Dodger blue color and they got a little bigger. And let's select our footer, which is this text right here, 2017 Alexander Mello. And I'm simply gonna text align center all the text in there. The font size, I'm gonna give it a smaller font size, and I'm just gonna change the color to light gray. I refresh it. Now I have this text align center and this light gray color. So notice how with just a little bit of CSS we've managed to make this boring website that would have looked like this. This boring looking website, and just by adding a couple of lines of CSS makes it look into a brand new page or just a different tone. So I want you guys to just mess around with all these properties and values. Maybe we can change the p tags to have a font size, let's say 100 pixels. That's really big. Notice how I give it 100 pixels, how this stands out a lot. It's 100 pixels. So just play around with it. Look up online basic CSS tags and just try to change it from what I had it, and just experiment with different properties and just experiment with different colors and just make your own web page out of this. So next we're gonna talk about CSS selectors, because we just been selecting p tags and footers and h3s, but what if we want to specifically target only one thing on our web page?